When my son told me I wasn't welcome at his house for Christmas, I just smiled, got in my truck, and made a single phone call. By the time New Year's rolled around, their mortgage was no longer being paid. And that was only the start. Justice needed to be served, and their smugness needed a little humbling. You won't believe what came next. But before we get into it, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. I could make my famous turkey this year, I said, settling into the plush leather of Ethan's couch. You know, with that sage stuffing your mom always loved. Remember how she used to say it beat her grandma's recipe by a mile? The words lingered in the cozy air, mingling with the scent of those high-end vanilla candles Valeria likes to scatter around the house. Ethan shifted beside me. The light from their 12-foot tree bounced off his wedding band, and I noticed his shoulders tense like he was getting ready to take a hit. Dad, you're not going to be welcome here for Christmas. It felt like someone had punched me in the chest. I blinked a few times, not sure I heard him right. What? What do you mean I'm not welcome? Ethan couldn't even look at me. His eyes locked on the marble coffee table, the same one I helped him choose last spring when Valeria decided their furniture wasn't elegant enough. Valeria's parents are coming, he said quietly. And they think, well, they'd rather you not be here. I felt the blood drain from my hands. They'd prefer, I repeated flatly. It's just easier this way, Dad. You know how her family is about their traditions. They have a very specific way they like to do things. Each word out of his mouth sounded smaller, like he was disappearing into himself. I looked around the room, those silk curtains. I bought them when Valeria griped about how the neighbors could see inside. The hardwood floors. That was the second mortgage I took out. The crown molding? Maxed out credit card. Every square inch of this house had my fingerprints on it, my love, my sacrifice. Their own way, I said, slow and steady. And what exactly is that, Ethan? He flinched like I slapped him. Dad, please don't make this harder than it already is. From where I sat, I could see into the kitchen, that fancy KitchenAid mixer? The Pro Level 1 Valeria swore she needed for her holiday baking phase? Yeah, that was a $3,000 phase. My money! And she used it maybe twice since she got it in October. So where am I supposed to go for Christmas then? I asked, voice quieter than I intended. Ethan's face fell. Maybe you could visit Aunt Amanda? Or we could do something the weekend after. The weekend after? Like Christmas was a dental appointment you could push to Monday. I stood up, my knees creaking from carrying this family on my back for nearly a decade. I see, I said. Dad, wait. But I was already headed for the door. I passed the family photos where my face kept getting smaller with each newer frame. I walked by the coat closet stuffed with Valeria's designer jackets. My hand found the doorknob cool and firm. Tell Valeria's parents something for me, I said without turning around. Feliz Navidad. The December chill slapped me in the face as I made my way to the truck. Behind me, Ethan called my name once. Then came the soft click of the door shutting. Final. Absolute. I sat in the truck for a moment with the engine off, watching Christmas lights glow in windows of houses where I clearly no longer belong. My phone buzzed, probably Ethan again, trying to patch things up with empty apologies and guilt trips. I didn't answer. Instead, I turned the key and pulled away from the house I paid for but was never really part of. The heater hummed as I drove through familiar streets, South Hills stretching out around me. Every corner held pieces of a past version of me, a man who believed family was worth everything, a man who would empty his pockets just to see his son smile. That man? He was a damn fool. I stopped at a red light on 29th and Grand. A young dad was loading wrapped presents into his SUV. His kids pressed their noses to the back window, fogging it up with excitement. That used to be me and Ethan. Back before Valeria. Back before I turned into an ATM with feelings that didn't fit the aesthetic. Numbers started spinning in my head like a busted slot machine. $3,800 a month. For 5 years. My calculator gave up trying to compute it last spring. $240,000. That's what I had poured into their lives. More than Sophia and I ever managed to save for retirement. And it was just gone. The light turned green. I hit the gas a little harder than necessary. The truck gave a low growl that matched how I felt. 5th Street. That's where I refinanced my house. Mine and Sophia's. Just to get them a down payment. I remember the loan officer looking at me with this kind of sad sympathy. Mr. Ortega, are you sure? That's a lot to risk for someone else's investment. Someone else's investment. Not my son's future. Not my family. Just a line on someone else's spreadsheet. Lincoln Street. That's where I took out the second mortgage after Ethan lost his job 2 years back. Just temporary, Dad. Just until I get back on my feet. Valeria stood behind him, $1,200 purse on her shoulder, nodding like she understood. Like she was already adding up how much more I'd give. Turns out my desperation meant nothing to them. I pulled into my driveway. The concrete was cracked, something I couldn't afford to fix since all my extra cash was funding their perfect suburban fantasy. The porch light flickered overhead. Another repair waiting for me. Inside, the house felt empty. No Sophia, no laughter. No more family dinners around the table. My phone rang as I fumbled with the keys. The ringtone echoed in the hollow space. Valeria's name lit up the screen. Perfect. I'd been waiting 5 years for this moment. I picked up on the 4th ring. Lucas, she said, sugary sweet. The same voice she used when asking me to cover their water bill or property taxes. I heard about the little misunderstanding with Ethan. Misunderstanding? I said, still standing in my coat, leaning against the counter. I think you made your point crystal clear, Valeria. Look, I know it sounds harsh, she said. But you have to try and see it from my parents' side. They're very traditional. They expect a certain kind of atmosphere around the holidays. A certain atmosphere. I repeated. And what kind of atmosphere would that be? She hesitated. I could hear the rustling of shopping bags in the background. No doubt spending money that should have gone toward the mortgage I'd been covering. Money that somehow became my burden. Well, they're not really used to your style of cooking. All that spicy Mexican food and loud music, she said, like it was some kind of crime. And frankly, Lucas, they're educated people. They expect conversations about current events, literature, art, you know? Those words landed like a punch to the gut. Harder than any insult she'd thrown before. For 8 years, I'd kept my mouth shut. Swallowed every jab and sideways glance she sent my way. For Ethan's sake. For the sake of keeping the peace. Pretended I didn't notice how she looked at me like I was the gardener who'd overstayed his welcome. My kind of cooking? I asked, keeping my voice even. Controlled. You mean the same food you scarfed down every Sunday for 3 years? When things were tight and you couldn't afford takeout. The tamales you said reminded you of your grandmother's? That was different, she said, like that settled it. We appreciated it then. But now, with my parents. Now that your parents are coming, you can't have the Mexican peasant embarrassing you at your upscale dinner table, huh? Her fake sweetness disappeared like mist in the sun. Don't be dramatic, Lucas. This isn't about race. It's about class. My father graduated summa cum laude from Washington State. My mother speaks 4 languages. They summer in the Hamptons. What exactly are you going to bring to the table? Stories about laying tile? My chest burned, but I didn't let my voice shake. I built a business from nothing after your husband's grandfather passed. I've given jobs to over 50 people. I've paid more in taxes than your dad ever made in a good year. She scoffed. Money isn't everything, Lucas. Breeding matters. Education matters. Frankly, Sophia understood her place better than you ever did. And just like that, the line went still. She'd stepped over something sacred I hadn't even realized I'd drawn in the sand until she bulldozed right past it in those overpriced heels of hers. What did you just say about my wife? I'm just saying she knew how to blend in. She didn't make waves. She understood that some places just weren't meant for her. My grip on the phone tightened until my knuckles turned bone white. Sophia had more grace, more dignity, in her pinky finger than your whole bloodline ever will. Oh, please. Valeria huffed. She was a housekeeper who got lucky. At least she had the decency to keep her mouth shut. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't yell. But something inside me shifted, permanently. Valeria. I said, my voice low and unfamiliar, like it had come from somewhere deeper than my own chest. Listen to me very carefully. This conversation is over. We're done pretending we're family. You can't just. We're done. I repeated and hung up. I placed the phone on the counter like it was made of glass. My hands were steady. Calmer than they had any right to be. The kitchen around me suddenly felt smaller but somehow lighter, like I'd opened a window and let something toxic escape. I walked over to the desk in the corner, Sophia's old writing desk, and pulled out the manila folder I'd been avoiding for months. Inside were the receipts of my slow unraveling. Bank statements, mortgage papers, 5 years of automatic transfers that bled me dry while they lived like royalty. It was time to stop the bleeding. Part 4. The first decision, canceling the mortgage. I spread the papers out on the table like evidence in a trial. My own trial. 5 years of financial carnage, each page stamped with the same betrayal. Every 15th of the month, $3,800, sucked out of my account, funneled straight into theirs. Like clockwork. Like I owed them. I pulled out a calculator and started punching numbers. First year, $63,800. Second year? Another $63,800. By year 3, I'd stopped buying clothes. Wore the same pair of work jeans until they tore at the knees. Year 4, I was bargain hunting at discount grocers, buying off-brand cereal and day-old bread. Year 5? Lunch was peanut butter sandwiches and black coffee. Every single day. $183,900. And that didn't even include the down payment. Or the times I covered their utility bills when Valeria's shopping habits spun out of control. That new roof they couldn't afford? Me. The landscaping that made their lawn look like a magazine spread? Me. The overpriced furniture Valeria said was essential for their lifestyle. Yeah. Me again. I leaned back in my chair, the numbers swimming in my vision. That money had names once: Sophia's life insurance, my retirement fund, the college savings account that was supposed to be for Ethan's kids. All of it. Gone. I lifted my glass to the silence around me, to Sophia's picture sitting up on the mantel, and to both the man I used to be and the one I was slowly turning into. Merry Christmas to me, I said out loud, and for once, I actually meant it. Part 5. Valeria's Provocation. The next morning rolled in cold and bright, with crisp December sunshine flooding through my kitchen windows while I sipped on my second cup of coffee. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't obsessively checking my bank account, dreading the bills that would clear in a few days. This sense of freedom? It tasted better than the premium Colombian coffee I'd finally splurged on. Right at 11:51 a.m., my phone rang. Valeria's name lit up the screen like a hazard sign. "Lucas," she said, her voice already laced with that familiar impatience. "I need you to pick up my parents from the Spokane airport. Their flight in from Portland lands at 2. I gently set my mug down and watched the steam rise and curl toward the ceiling. "Valeria," I said, keeping my voice steady, "did you already forget what we talked about yesterday?" "Look," she snapped, brushing me off. "Whatever that was, we've got more important things to handle now. My parents need a ride, and you're the only one around during the day." The nerve of her was something else. Not even a full day had passed since she told me I wasn't welcome at Christmas dinner with her family, and now she wanted me to play chauffeur? "And I'm asking," she added, "because that's what family does, Lucas. They help each other." Her tone turned sharper, slicing straight through my patience. And let's be real. You're not even my rival. You don't have what it takes. So just get in your truck and pick them up. There it was, the final jab, neatly packaged as a command. What airline? I asked quietly. Alaska Air. Flight 457. They'll be at baggage carousel 3. Then she added, and Lucas, try to handle their luggage like a grown man. Don't embarrass us. I could almost hear her perfectly manicured nails tapping something hard, most likely that expensive granite countertop I paid for when she decided laminate just wasn't classy enough for her dinner parties. Of course, I said. I'll handle everything. Good. And wear something presentable. That blue shirt from Ethan's graduation would be fine. They notice things like that. The call ended. No, thank you. I leaned back, staring at my phone's black screen. Flight 457, 3 o'clock, baggage claim 3. I looked up at the clock on the wall above my sink, 10:47 a.m. Still had plenty of time. So I poured myself another cup of coffee, added a little extra sugar this time, and opened up yesterday's paper to the crossword puzzle I hadn't quite finished. 7 across. Delayed gratification. 12 letters. I figured the answer would come to me eventually. Part 6, The Airport Trap. By 2:18 p.m., I was comfortably settled into my favorite armchair, sipping a hot cup of Earl Grey and flipping through the Sunday edition of the Spoken Review. Yesterday's crossword now lay completed on the table in front of me. That tricky clue? The answer was postponement. My phone buzzed on the wooden surface beside me. Valeria again. I let it ring. The afternoon sun angled in through the living room windows, casting a warm glow across the room where I'd spent too many nights tallying up the emotional price tag of my generosity. But this silence? It wasn't lonely, it felt earned. Intentional. At 2:34 p.m., the phone lit up again. This time, I saw a preview of her text. Dad, where are you? My parents are. I turned the phone face down and went back to reading the sports section. The Seahawks had blown it again. Some things just never change. By 3:12, the phone had buzzed 6 separate times. I'd finished the paper, brewed another pot of tea, and even started cleaning out the junk drawer in the kitchen. Funny what you can get done when you're not rushing around trying to meet the endless demands of people who treat you like their private butler. The 7th call came at 3:23. Different number this time. Probably her parents, borrowing a stranger's phone at the terminal. Didn't matter, I let it ring too. Outside, my neighbor was stringing up Christmas lights on his porch. His kids were running circles around the yard with that wild energy only a December afternoon can bring. A normal family, doing normal things. Nobody was stranded. Nobody was waiting on someone who decided to finally say no. At 3:55, the ringing turned relentless. Valeria. Then the unknown number again. Then back to Valeria. The buzzing was nonstop, like a wasp banging against glass. I walked into the kitchen, yanked the landline cord from the wall, and turned off my cell completely. Silence. Real, honest-to-God silence. I made myself a grilled cheese sandwich, golden and crispy, and poured some tomato soup into my favorite mug, the one I hadn't used in months because every dollar went to covering someone else's needs. The cheese melted just right. The soup was hot and comforting. Outside, the sun was already sinking low, throwing long shadows across the backyard. Somewhere across town, 3 people were probably pacing in a parking garage, arguing over taxi fare, wondering how their human doormat had dared to leave them hanging. That thought? It made the soup taste even better. By 5:05 p.m., I'd eaten, loaded the dishwasher, and was debating which movie to watch. It had been years, since I had an evening all to myself without some last-minute crisis or desperate call for cash. I was reaching for the remote when the pounding started. Not knocking, pounding. The kind of furious hammering that rattles the whole doorframe and screams rage. I set down my tea and walked slowly to the front door, already knowing exactly who was on the other side. The pounding got louder the closer I got, each blow more forceful than the last. Through the peephole, I saw them. 3 figures packed tight on my little porch, like wolves circling prey. I opened the door. Ryan Mercer's face was flushed red and already way too close to mine. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he barked, storming into my living room like he owned the place. "We waited at that goddamn airport for 3 hours!" Catherine came in right behind him, her hair out of place and her mouth tight with disdain. "This is completely unacceptable, Lucas," she said, her tone full of disgust. "Absolutely barbaric behavior for a man your age." Valeria followed last, her expensive coat wrinkled, makeup smeared, fury radiating off her. "You humiliated us. Do you even realize what you did? My parents had to take a $66 cab just because you decided to play games. Get out of my house," I said, cutting through their noise with a calm that startled even me. Their rants froze mid-sentence, stunned by the sharpness in my voice. "Excuse me?" Ryan's face darkened from red to purple. "You don't get to bark orders, not after pulling a stunt like that. This is my house," I said, not budging an inch. "And I want you gone. Now." Catherine stepped forward, her tone oozing the kind of superiority she'd honed over years of treating folks like me as less than. "Lucas, you clearly don't grasp just how badly you've messed up. My husband has connections all over this town. Business, social, you name it. You don't get to treat people like us this way and think there won't be consequences." Catherine snapped, her tone icy and smug. "This was a lesson," I cut in, locking eyes with her, calm but firm. "A lesson about your arrogance, and the way you belittle people you see as beneath you." Valeria's jaw dropped like she'd just been slapped. "A lesson? Who do you think you are, Lucas? You're nobody. You're just... I'm the man who finally stopped being your personal ATM and your family's unpaid Uber driver." I took a step back and opened the door wider, gesturing toward the exit. "Lesson's over," I said. "Time for you all to go." Ryan jabbed a finger in my direction, stopping just short of poking me in the chest. "You've got no clue who you're messing with, old man," he growled. "I've been a part of this town longer than you've been breathing its air. I know people, real people, people who can make your life hell." "Is that a threat, Mr. Mercer?" I asked, my voice quiet but steady. "No," he hissed. "It's a promise." His tone dipped into something dark and dangerous. "You think you can just abandon an elderly couple at an airport and walk away like it's nothing? You're about to find out just how wrong you are." Catherine nodded sharply, her smile cold enough to freeze the room. "Yes, Lucas. Actions have consequences, and yours will be quite public." Valeria grabbed her father's arm, clearly ready to be done. "Daddy, come on. This sad old man isn't worth our time." They shuffled out like a retreating army, shoulders stiff with defeat and faces twisted in outrage. But at the threshold, Ryan turned back. "You'll regret this," he said, voice low and loaded. "I guarantee it." I shut the door behind them and turned the deadbolt with a click that felt like victory. Through the window, I watched them climb into their rental car, still bickering as they disappeared into the early December night. The house felt different with them gone, lighter, almost cleansed. Like their presence had left behind a film I hadn't even noticed until it started to lift. But their final words lingered in the silence like an echo I couldn't shake. Public consequences. Important people. Connections. I walked back to the living room and picked up my tea. Still warm. And for the first time since all this nonsense began, I felt something close to worry creep in. But it was quickly buried beneath something even stronger, anticipation. Part 8, the headline. 3 days later, I was sitting at my kitchen table, enjoying my usual morning coffee and flipping through the Spoken Review, when I saw something that made my stomach lurch. There it was, my face, staring back at me from page 3. The headline read, "Spoken businessman abandons elderly couple at airport during holiday storm." I froze, my hands tightening around the coffee mug. The photo was old, must have been pulled from my company's old website. 5 years outdated at least. But there was no mistaking it. It was me. And below it? A hit piece so twisted it made my blood run cold, and my anger boil. According to the article, Ryan and Catherine Mercer had flown in to visit their daughter for Christmas. They'd supposedly been left stranded at Spokane International Airport for over 4 hours after I failed to appear for a prearranged pickup. They claimed they were waiting in dangerous winter conditions during an active storm warning. That last part made me laugh bitterly. It was 52 degrees and sunny that day. We just couldn't believe someone would treat us like that. Ryan was quoted as saying he'd even thrown in that he was a retired banking executive, just to sweeten the image. We called repeatedly, but Mr. Ortega never responded. We had to take an expensive cab in treacherous weather. At our age, this kind of neglect is more than inconsiderate, it's dangerous. The article didn't stop there. It went on to raise questions about my mental health and behavior, calling out erratic actions and suggesting I might be unwell. Ryan painted himself and Catherine as helpless victims of a heartless old man who snapped without reason. Of course, there was no mention of the part where I'd been disinvited from Christmas dinner. Nothing about the years of favors, the money I'd shelled out, or Valeria's cold, entitled demands. Just me, the villain. The monster who left 2 poor, frail tourists in a make-believe blizzard. I set the coffee down and read it again. Then a 3rd time, slower. The byline read Olivia Brooks, lifestyle editor. Didn't recognize the name, but the tactic? That I knew well. Ryan had pulled strings. He'd made calls. Used his connections from decades in the banking world to get the story exactly where it would sting the most. It was smart. Very smart. And for the first time since this whole thing started, I felt a reluctant flicker of respect. They weren't just spoiled brats throwing tantrums. They were planners. Cunning. Strategic. They knew that in a town like Spokane, reputation wasn't just important, it was currency. And one well-placed story could bankrupt a man's reputation in a single morning. They weren't just playing hardball. They'd gone nuclear. I folded the paper and set it down gently, already feeling my brain shift into gear. The part of me that had built a business from scratch. The part that could turn obstacles into opportunities. This wasn't about rides from the airport anymore. This wasn't about Christmas dinners or missed calls. This was about war. I opened my laptop and started typing. First, their names. Ryan Mercer. Catherine Mercer. Valeria Ortega. Then their socials, their circles, the crumbs they'd left behind over the years. Photos. Friends. Habits. Weaknesses. They'd made a lot public, too much. If they wanted a battle of strategy, I'd show them exactly what kind of strategist I could be. I glanced over at the wall calendar. December 18th. Exactly 1 week until Christmas. 7 days to design something they'd never forget. Part 9, The Rebuild. The next 3 days, I lived in a different universe. Not the tired version of Lucas Ortega, the man everyone leaned on, the guy who got trampled in the name of family. No. I stepped back into the shoes of the real me. The businessman? The tactician? The guy who spent 40 years building something that mattered, and who wasn't about to let it be dismantled by a group of petty freeloaders. My laptop became my war room. Tabs filled the screen like cards in a poker hand. Ryan Mercer, retired bank manager, member of the Spokane Country Club, treasurer of some local business association. A man who'd built his identity around being respected. A man with a reputation he couldn't afford to see tarnished. Catherine's social media was a goldmine of curated perfection. Charity events, overpriced wine tastings, selfies from lakeside resorts tagged with hashtags like #BlessLife. Every single post of hers was crafted like a museum piece, perfect lighting, flawless captions, all meant to scream success and class. Her friends chimed in with comments about how elegant she was, how inspiring her life looked. The whole thing was built on a foundation of borrowed money, mine included. Valeria's Facebook was a little more revealing, though. She had updates about our beautiful home, complete with shots of that kitchen I'd paid to remodel. She checked in at high-end restaurants on nights I was covering their utility bills. There was even a post from just a few days ago. So excited for Christmas dinner with family. Can't wait to show off our hosting skills. Our hosting skills. Our home. Our success. The sheer nerve of it was staggering. But it was Ethan's LinkedIn that handed me the missing puzzle piece. I noticed a new connection in his activity: Olivia Brooks, lifestyle editor at the Spoken Review. The very same Olivia who wrote that hit piece dragging my name through the mud. I leaned back in my chair, eyes scanning all the open tabs on my laptop. The evidence was piling up. They'd made 3 major mistakes. First, they underestimated me, completely. Second, they went public with their smear campaign, which meant I had every right to answer it publicly. And third, they basically gift-wrapped their entire lavish lifestyle and posted it online like a highlight reel of hypocrisy. I clicked on Olivia's profile. She was 43, had a journalism degree from Washington State, and 15 years of local newspaper work. No ties to finance or banking, which told me Ryan likely contacted her cold, probably leaning on some old industry buddy. It only took me 5 minutes of digging through local business directories to connect the dots. 3 shared contacts between Ryan and Olivia's editor. This wasn't just some random story. It was planted, planned, and executed with precision. Amateur hour. I opened a fresh document and started typing, not a rebuttal, not a sob story, but a timeline. Cold, hard facts. 5 years of financial help, all laid out with bank statements, receipts, and canceled checks. I listed the $63,000 I pulled from my home equity loan for their down payment. The $29,000 I dropped on granite countertops because Valeria just had to have them. Then there were the mortgage payments, $3,800 a month for 5 straight years. That's $198,000, and counting. Altogether? $250,000, give or take. More than I'd spent on myself in the last 10 years. While I was working, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Probably Valeria trying to soften me up or twist the story again. I didn't even look. I kept at it. By the time night fell, I had everything sorted into a thick manila folder that could have choked a horse. There were bank records, receipts, screenshots of their social media posts flaunting stuff I'd paid for, and a printout of that newspaper article. My red pen notes, scribbled in the margins, exposing every lie. I glanced at the calendar on my wall. December 24th. Not just Christmas Eve, the perfect day to set the record straight. According to Valeria's public Facebook events, because privacy clearly wasn't their strong suit, they were hosting dinner for 12. Friends, neighbors, family, the whole well-connected crew. The exact kind of people who read the Spoken Review and judged you based on it. I shut my laptop and walked into the kitchen to grab my camera, the good one I used for job site photos back in the day. This time, it had a different kind of work ahead of it. Christmas Eve rolled in cold and gray, one of those Spoken winter mornings where you're thankful to have a roof over your head and people to spend the day with. I wasn't invited to either. But that was fine. I had other plans. I laid everything out like a trial lawyer prepping for court. The bank statements were sorted by year, mortgage payments highlighted in yellow. The receipts were in order, showing the pattern of financial dependence. I'd even printed pictures, Valeria's new jewelry, their tropical vacations, the pricey Christmas decorations currently hanging in the house I helped pay for. Each packet was copied 12 times, one for every guest. On top of every stack, I placed the article from the Spoken Review, red ink in the margins calling out every falsehood. Lie was scribbled next to Ryan's nonsense about dangerous weather. False, by the quote about my erratic behavior. Missing context was marked where they conveniently left out the years I'd kept them afloat. I dressed with care, put on the navy blue suit I'd worn to Sophia's funeral. It was pressed and sharp. Today I wasn't playing the role of the family doormat. Today, I was showing up as a man who deserved some damn respect. At 6:30 that evening, I loaded the packets into my briefcase and drove over to Kendall Yards. Their place was glowing with warmth and Christmas lights. The driveway was full, and the street was lined with cars. Through the big front windows, I could see folks gathered around the dining table, Valeria flitting about in full hostess mode, putting on the show. The show I'd paid for. I parked across the street and checked my watch. 6:45, right on cue. They'd be halfway through the main course, just enough time to catch everyone mid-bite, with no polite excuse to duck out. Front door? Unlocked. Of course it was. Valeria loved to brag about how safe their neighborhood was. No need for locks when you live in a fantasy world. I stepped inside. The warm air hit me in the face, along with the hum of laughter and clinking silverware. From the dining room, I heard Catherine say something snooty. "But darling, that's not how we do things in our family." More laughter. Our family? After all they'd done to kick me out of it. I walked into the dining room, briefcase in hand. 12 faces turned toward me, expressions shifting from confused to horrified. Valeria froze mid-sip, her wine glass hovering in the air. Ethan looked like he'd seen a ghost. Ryan and Catherine went pale. "Good evening, everyone," I said, my voice steady, as I set my briefcase on the marble sideboard. "Hope you don't mind me joining your little Christmas gathering." Valeria was the first to recover. "Lucas, this is completely inappropriate. You need to leave, right now." "Actually," I replied, opening the case and pulling out a packet, "I think your guests deserve to know who really paid for this lovely evening. This house. This whole lifestyle you've been parading around." A woman I didn't recognize, probably one of Catherine's high society friends, leaned in with interest. "What's he talking about, Valeria?" He's having some kind of episode." Valeria stammered. "Ethan, call someone." But I was already walking the room, calmly placing a packet in front of each guest like I was handing out menus. "Here you go," I said. 5 years of financial support. $198,000 in mortgage payments alone. Plus the down payment, kitchen remodel, furnishings, appliances, you name it. Everything you see here? I helped make it happen." I watched their expressions shift as they took in the numbers, the dates, and the undeniable proof of both my generosity and their lies. One man started to say, "This is," but then he froze, eyes fixed on a bank statement. "Outrageous." The woman across from him finished for him. "Valeria, why didn't you tell us any of this?" I could see Valeria's flawless calm beginning to crack. "It's more complicated than you think." Lucas offered to help. "We never asked for it." I cut in, pulling out the newspaper article. "Actually," I said, "let's talk about what you did ask for, and what you told the media about me." The air in the room felt like it dropped 10 degrees. I laid the papers on the table, watching as the guests recognized my photo from that unflattering story published just 3 days ago. Then I spoke up again, my voice cutting through the sudden silence. "Let's discuss the real manipulators in this family." Ryan's face drained of color, going from red to pale as a ghost. Catherine sat stiff, clutching her wine glass but forgetting it was there. "Mr. Mercer here used his banking connections to plant that story," I said, tapping the newspaper. "See how they paint me as unstable and dangerous, abandoning poor elderly people in freezing weather?" A gray-haired man in an expensive sweater looked up from the article. "Ryan, what is this all about?" he asked. The weather was 52 degrees and sunny. I answered before Ryan could speak. "And those weren't stranded tourists. They were Valeria's parents coming to Christmas dinner, a dinner I was banned from because I supposedly wasn't good enough for their company." Finally Catherine spoke up, but her words stumbled out. "That's not, you never said what, Catherine?" I interrupted, pulling out my phone with screenshots of Valeria's social media posts. "That I was too low class for your parents. That my Mexican food and working class talk would embarrass you in front of your fancy friends." One of the women, someone I guessed was one of Catherine's charity pals, shifted uneasily in her seat. "Catherine, you didn't really say that," she murmured. Ryan tried to push back. He's twisting everything. This guy has serious mental health problems. The stress of getting older, financial trouble. Financial trouble? I almost laughed out loud. Mr. Mercer, I've been supporting your daughter and son-in-law with almost $3,000 a month for 5 years. The only financial problems here are the ones you're about to face. I turned to address the whole table. These people have taken $200,000 from me while calling me names behind my back. They turned my own son against me, kicked me out of family events, and when I finally stood up for myself, they tried to destroy me in the newspaper. Ethan finally spoke up, voice barely a whisper. Dad, I didn't know about the newspaper. Your wife knew, I said quietly. And her parents planned it. They made me the villain just because I refused to be their personal ATM and chauffeur. The atmosphere in the room was shifting, like tectonic plates slowly moving beneath their feet. I could see it in the guests' faces, the dawning realization that everything they'd been told about tonight's generous hosts was a lie. This is unforgivable, said an older woman wearing pearls, staring hard at the bank statements. Ryan, how could you let your daughter take advantage of this man's generosity, then attack him publicly when he stopped? Ryan's carefully held up mask was falling apart. You don't understand the whole story. Oh, I understand perfectly, the woman snapped back. This man supported your family financially while you treated him like hired help, and when he finally said no, you tried to ruin his name. Catherine's voice came out strangled. He abandoned us at the airport. After you told me I wasn't welcome at Christmas dinner because my presence would embarrass your parents, I said, calm but firm. After 5 years of paying their bills while you looked down on me for my background and education. The silence was deafening. 12 people sat staring at Ryan and Catherine with looks ranging from disgust to embarrassment for ever being connected to them. Valeria made one last desperate attempt to control the story. Everyone, please. This is a family matter that's gotten out of hand. No, I cut in firmly. This stopped being a family matter when you made it public. When you used the newspaper to attack my character and decided my reputation was acceptable collateral damage to save your pride. I scanned the table, looking at faces I didn't know but who now knew exactly who I was. I want you all to know the truth before you read about Lucas Ortega in the paper again, because you will hear from me again. But next time, it'll be the real story. I closed my briefcase and straightened my tie. Enjoy the rest of your dinner. It's the last one I'll be paying for. As I headed to the door, I heard the explosion behind me, voices rising with accusations, questions demanding answers, the sound of a carefully built social mask shattering. It was the most beautiful Christmas music I'd ever heard. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in March, sent by certified mail, every word carrying the weight of legal trouble. I signed for it at the door, noticing how the spring air smelled of fresh growth and new chances instead of the desperate chill of that dark December. The envelope read, Notice of Default, Final Demand for Payment. Inside, 3 months of missed mortgage payments had caught up with Ethan and Valeria like a tidal wave. $8,400 overdue, 14 days to pay up or face foreclosure on the house I'd helped them buy. I set the letter down and went back to my coffee, reading it like you'd read a weather report from far away, interesting, but no longer my problem. My phone had been ringing for weeks, with calls growing more desperate. Valeria's number was blocked after the first frantic voicemail. Ryan and Catherine's social standing in Spokane had evaporated like morning mist after their Christmas dinner humiliation. Even Ethan, whose calls I'd been ignoring out of a mix of anger and curiosity, mostly wondering how long it would take him to swallow his pride. Turns out, the answer was 97 days. That Thursday evening, he showed up at my door. No longer the confident man who'd shut me out of Christmas dinner, but someone who looked like he'd aged 10 years in 3 months. Dark circles under his eyes, his fancy suit all wrinkled, desperation hanging around him like cheap cologne. "Dad," he said when I opened the door. "We need to talk." I stepped aside and let him in, noticing how he looked around the house like it was brand new to him, The new furniture I bought with my first mortgage-free paycheck, the fresh paint on walls that hadn't seen an update in 8 years because every spare dollar had gone to supporting his lifestyle. Finally, the repairs I could afford now that I wasn't funding someone else's American dream. "Nice place," he said quietly. "This is what happens when you spend money on yourself instead of on people who don't deserve it." "Appreciate that," I said, settling into my new recliner. "Coffee?" He shook his head and sat on the edge of the couch like he was afraid to get comfortable. "Dad, I need you to know how sorry I am about everything. Christmas dinner, the newspaper article, how we treated you." "Go on." "I didn't know Ryan planted that story." "I swear I didn't." He ran his hands through his hair. "Jesus, Dad. The things they said about you behind your back. The way they talked about our family. About Mom's memory." My jaw tightened at the mention of Sophia, but I kept my voice steady. "And what exactly did they say about your mother?" "That she knew her place better than you knew yours. That she understood boundaries. They couldn't look me in the eye. I should have defended you. I should have stood up to them years ago." "Yes," I said simply. "You should have." We sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of 5 years of mistakes filling the room. Outside, I could hear my neighbor mowing his lawn, the usual sounds of a Thursday evening in a normal neighborhood, where sons don't exclude their fathers from Christmas dinner. "The house is in foreclosure," Ethan said finally. "I know. We can't make the payments without." He stopped, realizing how that sounded. "Without my help," I finished for him. "Without the money I sent every month while you let your wife's family treat me like garbage." "I know how it looks, Ethan." I leaned forward, making sure he met my eyes. "Do you know how much money I sent you over 5 years?" He nodded miserably. "Valeria did the math after Christmas. The mortgage payments, the down payment, everything. Over $400,000. $237,468. I corrected him. "I know the exact amount because I finally did something I should have done years ago. I added it all up." His face crumpled. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to fix this." "You can't fix it, son. That money's gone. But more than that, those years are gone. 5 years I could have been building a relationship with you instead of funding your wife's fantasy life." "I know. I know that now." He looked up at me, something like hope flickering in his eyes. "Maybe we could start over. Maybe there's a way to." "Are you asking me to start paying the mortgage again?" The hope died instantly. "We're going to lose everything, Dad. The house, Valeria's respect, her parents' approval. I don't know what I'll do." "You'll figure it out," I said, not unkindly. "The same way I figured out how to live without a son who respected me. The same way I learned to spend Christmas alone while you celebrated with people who thought I was beneath them." Then he started crying quietly, like a man who'd run out of options. "I lost you, didn't I? I chose them over you, and now I've lost you for good." I watched him for a long moment, this man I raised, loved, sacrificed for, who let his wife's family convince him his father wasn't good enough. "Ethan," I said finally, "you didn't lose me. You gave me away. There's a difference." He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "Is there any chance, any way you could forgive me?" "I forgave you months ago," I said, "and I meant it. But forgiveness doesn't mean going back to how things were. It doesn't mean pretending this never happened or that I'll start paying for a lifestyle that came with the condition I'd be grateful for scraps of your attention." "Then what does it mean?" I stood and walked over to the mantel, where Sophia's photo sat next to a new picture, me with Amanda and her family at Easter dinner, the first holiday I'd spent with people who actually wanted me there. "It means that if you want a relationship with me, you're going to have to build it from scratch. It means showing me respect instead of demanding I earn it. It means making choices based on what's right, not what's easy or convenient." I looked back at him. "And it means that the next time someone, your wife, her parents, whoever, tries to exclude me from family events, you'll remember who actually acts like family." He nodded slowly, maybe for the first time really understanding that respect isn't something you just take for granted. "The house," he asked quietly, "isn't my problem anymore?" I sat back down, feeling lighter than I had in years. "You're a grown man, Ethan. Handle it like grown men do. Get a job that pays enough to cover your bills. Sell the house and buy something you can afford. Stop living beyond your means and expecting other people to bail you out." He stood slowly, shoulders straightening for the first time since he arrived. "You're right about all of it. I know." He headed for the door but paused, turning back. "Dad, for what it's worth, seeing you stand up for yourself at Christmas dinner, I was proud of you. Embarrassed and angry, but proud." "Good," I said. "Maybe there's hope for you yet." After he left, I poured a glass of good whiskey and stepped onto my back porch. Spring was coming to Spokane, the trees starting to bud, the air warming with promise. In 4 months, I'd be 63. Sophia had been gone for 8 years. I'd wasted 5 of those years being a doormat for people who didn't appreciate sacrifice. I wasn't about to waste any more. My phone buzzed. A text from Amanda, "Dinner Sunday. The kids want to show you their school projects." I smiled and typed back, "Wouldn't miss it." Real family, it turned out, was about being with people who actually wanted you there. Everything else was just expensive theater, and I was done buying tickets to shows where I wasn't welcome on stage. The whiskey tasted like freedom, and the future looked as bright as I was willing to make it. If you like this story, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next story, click the box on the left.